So Bruce and Aaron and Susie, come on up. I don't see Susie in the room.
Craig, are you hearing this, Craig? It sounds on
Craig.
TV, but it's pretty low.
Craig, is Natalie's on? It sounds on, but yep.
Well, we can fix it. Maybe she won't now. However, it sounds like it's on. Maybe it's just the acoustics of this little. I think he's adjusting. We'll do more of that. Here's Aaron and Susie.
So come on up, Bruce. Come on up, Aaron.
Sorry, we didn't know how to get into the live. So Aaron
Either of those two seats, I'm not going to go in order because John's going first. Well, if you want to stay closest to Natalie, that would be the way you were. Wait, do we need one more? Yeah, we need one more. One more. Natalie, don't you move though. You were in the light, so stay where you are. BYO chair. You stay where you are. Okay. Let's do it. Sit in a circle. Just sit in a circle. Yeah, you want me to hold that? Okay. I noticed
All
you
right.
didn't bring me one.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay? I have a microphone. That's for the rest of you to use. But thank you. And actually, John is going to go first if you want to. Oh, if I could welcome you back to the front, and feel free if you want to migrate up a little bit closer, those of you who are on your feet, if you'd like to be closer to the front for this. Hello to our online audience. I believe that we are streaming live at this point, so if you are on Facebook or on YouTube, thank you for joining us. Those of us who are in the room have full stomachs from that delicious brunch.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, youth group.
The brunch to support the mission trip for our youth group that's going to spend some time on the coast of Maine this summer. And if you didn't get to come and eat the good food, you can still participate by buying a share in the mission trip, which entitles you to a postcard personally signed by one of our high school youth during the mission trip. So don't miss that opportunity. You can make a donation online at saugatuckchurch.org/ways to give, and then choose the giving type, Youth Mission Trip. I am so pleased to have this conversation this morning. Are we still morning? We are.
Yeah.
With Natalie Owens-Pike and several members of our Renewal season implementation team. A shout out to Linda Yingling and to Priscilla Long, who are also members of our team, along with Bruce Borner and Aaron Cancrose, Susie Benton, and John Canning. Together, they are helping us prepare for our summer, when I will be away on sabbatical, and you all will be having all kinds of fun with Natalie as our sabbatical pastor and minister of fun.
Yeah.
We're going to unpack what that means. After the last interview that we had with me about the sabbatical, Natalie came up and she had shared a little bit just briefly about her joining us for the summer, and came up later and she said, you know, there's all this stuff about what I love and what I care about that I didn't mention. And I said, we should just do a whole interview so that you get a chance to share some of what matters to you and what brings you here. It's also a chance for us to show off some of the members of our team. So just a couple of basics to get us started. You all know, I think, that Natalie Owens-Pike is a Master of Divinity candidate at Yale Divinity School, 2023 graduation. She is our ministry intern. She is also a Raymond Preaching Fellow, which is why once in a while we send her with our blessings, and she is doing some guest preaching in several other churches around the area. And as of last week, she is officially a member in discernment with the Minnesota Conference of the United Church of Christ. Woo. What that means, for those of you who may be new to the language, is that she has officially begun the process towards ordination as a clergy person in our United Church of Christ. So we are really excited for that, and can't wait to see where that leads you, Natalie. Just really awesome. So what we're going to do is to have each of our Renewal team members pose a question to give Natalie a chance to do some sharing. There is also a microphone, and after 4 questions have been asked, if you have others that have bubbled up, we invite you to come forward and to share those. For those of you who may be online on YouTube or Facebook, Bruce Borner is not ignoring us. He is on his phone so that he can see if you post any questions in the chat. So he'll be checking in periodically. And so if there are any questions that come up online, we will try to keep tabs, and Bruce will lift them up near the end of our conversation. So that's how we will do this over the next little bit. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the mic over to John Canning for our first question.
Yeah, thank you, Alison. And before I actually ask the question, I just want to make you more acquainted with some of Natalie's outstanding qualifications. As many of you know, I happen to be on the board of Andover Newton Seminary at Yale Divinity School. And I got to say, her name comes up at just about every meeting. So, and I just wanted you to make, you know what she does here, but let me tell let me tell you something. She's on the student steering committee at the school. She's one of the Bible circle leaders. And then finally, the board just this past year set up a new scholarship fund in honor of a woman named Linda Campanella, who had been the board chair all through the time of this combination between Andover, Newton, and Yale. Just was outstanding. So we now have a new scholarship fund set up, and it was announced at a recent board meeting that the first winner of a scholarship from that fund is Natalie. So I hope you all appreciate it. We just have somebody very outstanding here. Natalie, I'm going to kind of ask you a general question here, and you decide how much you want to be saying on this thing. I first like to, you could comment, because you've had a lot of full experiences already, particularly in teaching. What has made you at this point in your life decide to pursue ordained ministry? Yeah. And then, and was kind of a corollary to that, her internship only runs through May, but she has decided to stay with us during the time of Alison's sabbatical, and what has led you to decide to do that as well? So.
Thank you, John. So ministry has been on my mind and on my heart for a long time. I was raised by a minister. My mom is a Unitarian Universalist chaplain and minister, and I grew up surrounded by these really rad, powerful women ministers who were leading communities and making change happen in our midst, and I was always really inspired by that. And I grew up in a really wonderful church community in Minneapolis, in a Universalist church there. So it's actually just so wonderful to be pairing this with the youth group brunch this morning because youth group was a really important part of my life and upbringing, and a place where I really felt like I could be my full self. So why I'm pursuing ministry now is towards that same goal. I've been a teacher, I've been the executive director of a nonprofit that was education focused. So I've been leading organizations and groups of people for about 10 years before I came to seminary. But I always felt like the spirituality part of myself that's so important to me, my connection to God, and the ways that I saw God moving in the communities that I was a part of, either as a youth or in my UCC church membership in Minneapolis, that I always had to kind of put that part of myself aside or leave that part at the door. And pursuing ministry allows me to weave together all of those parts of my experience and my heart and what I think God can do in the world with a group of people. And it was also, you mentioned I'm on a couple of committees, but it was a committee that really finally drew me towards ordained ministry, and I feel like that's the most congregationalist call story. But I served on an associate minister search committee in Minneapolis at the church where I'm a member, and I was reading all these profiles of candidates for this position, reading about the questions they were asking in seminary, reading about the communities they'd developed there and the things that they'd learned, and I was like, these people are so cool, and they're thinking about all these things I want to think about, and they're talking about justice, and they're weaving together the love of God and love for creation in our world and for all people. And the voice of nudging me towards seminary just got louder and louder over this year-long committee. And when we called our next associate minister, I said, I have to do this. And waited 10 years, and that was long enough. So, yeah. And why Saugatuck? I would say I originally chose to work with this church and sought to work with you all because I had heard so many wonderful things about your work in the community and how engaged you were with each other. And when I met with Alison, there was so much that I learned from Alison, even in our first initial conversations, that I said, this is a place where I want to learn more. So initially, it was Alison's mentorship and how much I could learn from her that drew me. And I'm staying because of each of you, because I've gotten to know how you move in community together and how much you care about this place and want to grow together. And I'm really honored to be able to be with you as we learn what it looks like to be in renewal, to renew and to rest and to care for each other over this sabbatical time while Alison is off caring for her own spirit. So.
Natalie, you have shared with us that you're an outdoors person.
Yes.
That you spend time in the woods, hiking, you're a scuba diver.
Yes.
So you're literally immersed in the marine environment.
Yes.
Right? And I wondered if you could say a little more about how your time spent in nature and communing with the natural world inspires your faith and your relationship with God, and also how your faith and your love of God informs your appreciation of and of the natural world, and how that all that may relate to what we're going to do this summer.
Yes. Oh, I love this question. So I will say, like being out in the natural world and experiencing nature as a place of peace and connection to creation has been a part of my upbringing. My dad is a plant biologist and a landscaper, a natural landscaper, native landscaper, and so every family outing involved like identifying native plants on plant walks, and the meditative space in between each plant that we were identifying. So I will say I very much come by it honestly, of seeking belonging in nature and having a perspective of care towards nature. So I can thank my dad for that, certainly. And then I spent some time in college, well, in high school and college, as a camper and then a trail guide leading wilderness adventure trips with teenage women. So I led 1, 2, and 3 week long trips canoeing and hiking, mostly in the Boundary Waters in northern Minnesota. And that place has an immense spiritual importance to me. It's a place where I have learned to trust my own strength through challenge, both physical, mental, and spiritual. And when I was a 19-year-old entrusted to lead groups of 12 to 14-year-old girls solo, other people's children in the wilderness, I had developed a very active prayer life. Those of you who have been on any sort of youth trip, a youth group leadership, or maybe in the wilderness, know that you really have to surrender over to powers that are higher than yourself. So whether it was bad weather or group dynamics, or just the opportunity to be paddling lakes all day long, that every stroke of the canoe is an opportunity for prayer. So I have gotten to know wooded and mountainous and lake landscapes very well in my life. My husband Alex is from Montana, so we've spent a lot of time there too. And I'm really excited to get to know this coast, the marshlands, the woods, and the beach area with each of you, and get to know what it means to you. When have you found God in this place? When have you turned to a particular spot in nature that fuels you or builds community or connection to God for you? And we're just all gonna have to work together to release our jealousy of Alison on her island hopping, because as soon as I found out she was going to the Maldives, I was like, how big is your suitcase though? Because it's a spot that is known for really wonderful snorkeling and scuba diving and a really thriving coral reef. And yeah, I guess I will just close this question by saying that the experience of scuba diving and being immersed in water and dependent on the oxygen tank you are carrying on your back is also another opportunity for surrendering in prayer and just to be really swallowed by the wonders of God's creation and what a miracle it is that we get to be a part of it, and that we are starting to understand our impact on it as humans and the amazing opportunities we have to make different choices and to work together to have a different impact on our coastal ecosystem and our climate in the region.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to address the Minister of Fun.
Yes. Thank you, Erin.
I had the pleasure of being on the women's retreat and really enjoyed all the games.
We had a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. There was play, there was humor, and as we were talking, I think it was last week, we all sort of came up with, at first it was kind of informal, Minister of Fun, but now I realize it is formal because it's in the bulletin. So you are officially...
We wrote it down.
Yes, we wrote it down, so you're the Minister of Fun. So I wanted to ask you the role of fun, play, humor in your life and in your ministry, and what that looks like for Saugatuck this summer.
Thanks, Erin. I love this. We need some fun. I've just felt this. Alison and I have talked so much this year about how we really need play, how we need the work of play in our lives to help open us up to new experiences, to new understandings of each other and ourselves. So as soon as, I think it was Priscilla that was that coined this term, Minister of Fun, as naming a need that already existed in this community, and it also unlocked for me a potential dream job description, because those of you who were on the women's retreat know that I love to have fun, I love to laugh, and that doesn't mean that we ignore the other emotions that we hold, right? That whenever we played a lot of games on the women's retreat, and we would always take a moment afterwards to kind of say, well, what were we doing there? What came up for us in that? What were we feeling in playing? So for me, fun is an entry point to being able to trust each other in different ways, and leaves room for the full spectrum of emotions. And I've come to that understanding because I spent 4 years in undergrad on an improv comedy team, and spent many, many hours a week practicing, not telling jokes, but just practicing being present with the person that you're in a scene with, right? And learning a lot about, it's not really about pushing towards fun or pushing towards laughter, but it's really about being present and open to what bubbles up and what comes up in between people in comedy. And it's something that I haven't thought about in a long time. I haven't done any improv since. It hasn't been a big part of my life. But it's come up in a lot of our conversations that Alison and I get to have. It's come up with my spiritual director a lot, who's someone who's a mentor to me on my journey to ministry. And I think sometimes we think that church has to be serious in order to be meaningful. And I just want to invite us to be able to experience renewal across that full spectrum of emotion, and to move towards how God is asking us to enjoy each other and to be playful, and to experience the renewal of laughter and the healing that comes from that.
I had a great time at the women's retreat. And it's all because of you.
Thank you, Bruce.
So my question is, what expectation do you have after you've done this?
Yeah.
Played this role.
Yeah.
There I go. Oh, you don't need that.
I don't need that. So what expectation do I have, like, after I leave Saugatuck, after I graduate, or?
After this session where we're asking you to minister.
From today forth.
Yes.
Well, great question. I expect to connect with more of you and to hear from each of you about what are some things that, what are some ideas that have been sparked by this conversation? Maybe it's a place in nature that holds importance to you, or is a place of peace for you. Maybe it's an experience of fun or a game that you really love that you want me to know about. Maybe it's something that comes to mind when you think of what does it look like to experience renewal in a church community that works really hard, is working right now to support the youth group with this brunch. So my expectations are that I want to work together with you to help to plan some really wonderful low work, high fun events. So things like, maybe we'll tour the oyster beds. Maybe we'll go on a boat cruise together. Maybe we'll have a clam bake. I know that has sparked some joy and excitement already for folks. So thinking that we'll have a few events where we can all come together as community, and then thinking about what are some ways that we can create more weekly or bi-weekly opportunities to be in community and to be in some spiritual practices that can create renewal for us. And maybe when we're on this boat tour, for example, maybe we come up with the next casual weeknight event we're going to do together. Or maybe when we are walking the labyrinth and considering our coastal community, maybe we come up with an idea that we want to do a month from now. So there's expectations about some bigger events that we're going to start planning soon, and then things that can just pop up that feel joyful and fun and like the right thing at that moment. I'll also be leading worship weekly with Jim Antal in June, and then some of our beach worship sessions, and then here in our beautiful sanctuary space for the summer.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Natalie.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any questions popping up on the live stream?
No, people are satisfied.
Excellent. So I want to turn to those of you who are in the room and see whether anything is bubbled up for you that you'd like to ask Natalie. If so, there's a microphone waiting for you. Come up and don't make her job too easy, y'all. Questions that you have for her or broadly about what's unfolding for the summer.
I could also bring a microphone to you if that feels better.
Where do you see yourself serving in the long term once you graduate? What type of community, what type of purpose
Yeah.
do you see once you're fully ordained?
Thanks, Paul. So Paul's question was, what kind of community, where do I see myself serving after I'm ordained? My goal is to be working in a parish ministry setting in a church, and that's pretty much the only expectation I'm placing on it right now. Yeah, I'm trying to let the rest be in God's hands right now. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
This has been partially addressed, but at what point in your life did you decide you want to go in a religious practice?
Yeah. What point in my life did I want to pursue religious practice, spiritual practice? Did I capture it? Yes. Okay. I would say, there have been a lot of points in my life where it's become more important, or, ebbs and flows of spiritual practice or church belonging in my life that have been important to me. I will say as a youth and a young person, I was part of a really welcoming and wonderful community in my youth group that was really focused on developing leadership, and I felt really, I felt like it was a place where I could be myself and where I could be invited to, lead aspects of the worship service or lead a particular portion of the youth group time. So the people who were in that spiritual community were really focused on seeing young adults as full people and as full contributors to the church community. And that was something that I think I experienced most profoundly at church. So that was an opportunity for spiritual practice for me. I will say, the reason why I love Lent, I talked about how I love Lent in today's sermon and service. When I graduated from college, I moved to rural Mississippi, and I became a teacher there with the Teach for America program. And I grew up in Minneapolis in a big city, and in the far north, and I moved to a town of 15,000 people in the rural south, and I started working at a public school where I was one of very few white people who worked there or who participated in the school. It was almost all African American students and colleagues. And that was a time in my life where I really had to learn a lot across culture and be in a posture of learning and humility, because the community that I was joining or was a part of had a lot to offer and teach me that I didn't know when I arrived. And it was a time of being outside of my comfort zone in pretty much every way possible. And in that time, I really sought spiritual practice. Because when I felt discomfort, or when I felt like the kind of stretching and growing that happens when we learn, right? That I had learned other spiritual practices in my life that helped me to reestablish that zone of comfort and to feel like, oh, I can integrate these things I'm learning. I can learn from the people who are around me. So I started doing a spiritual practice of reading scripture during Lent when I lived there. Yeah.
I have a question.
Oh, great. Is it from the internet or
No, this
it's not from the
this
live
is
stream?
personal.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Grace.
Well, personal. It's obvious that you have a very strong faith,
Yeah.
and I'm curious when you discovered the power of faith, and how, and if you could comment on the difficulty of explaining to people the power of faith, because it's simple.
Yeah.
It's faith. It's belief, and that's pretty much. There's not much more to it than just believing and having faith. How do you convince even parishioners, people that come to church, that it's all about faith and it's all about trust? How do you do that?
Well, I think I'll take the first portion of your question to start, which is how have I understood the power of faith, or how have I come to feel my sense of faith? And I think some of it has happened in relationships. In my upbringing, my godmothers were a very big part of my life. They helped to raise my sister and I, and they took their faith role as my godmothers very seriously, in addition to providing kind of community care and child care for my sister and I, and mentorship. So one of them was a former nun, and talked a lot about the importance of faith in her life, and the power that faith held for her. So I had a lot of examples in my life of my godmothers, of my church community, of my mom and her rad minister friends, of my dad and his spirituality more connected to nature. So that's one answer to your question about how do you invite other people into that, right? Is I think giving a lot of examples of this is how faith has shown up in my life. And then, John mentioned some of the committees that I'm on at school, and I think that's sort of a representation of the fact that I don't shy away from challenge. I love a challenge. Moving to rural Mississippi as a 22-year-old, right out of college, was a transformative and wonderful challenge. So I have tended to put myself in situations where I can't do it on my own, where I'm doing something that challenges me so much that if I tried to do it on my own, which I have, if I try to do it on my own, it doesn't work. It hurts me, right? And it prevents us from getting to know the beautiful outcomes that are possible when we do see God in each other, when we understand each other's humanity through our belovedness in God, when we have spiritual practices that we can turn to when we feel like we can't go on with the challenge, or we feel like we've come to the end of our resources. So I think I've tended to put myself in experiences where I've needed God to really make the challenge an opportunity and to see something new come out of the challenge.
Love that.
So I hope that's what we can do together this summer. We've had a lot of challenge over the last couple of years. I don't need to tell you that. And I think that there's a lot of rich opportunity in turning towards each other and in turning towards God in our midst to do that. It's a challenge, yes.
Bob,
Yes.
if you would model using the microphone for us, thank you, just so we can all. You've got the green one. Yeah.
I have a three-part question.
Okay.
Okay? See how well your memory is. The first part is, what are the dates we're talking about?
Okay.
The second part is, I presume there'll be work as well as play? You know, like cleaning up the
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Interesting assumption. Yes.
No, that was a question, not an assumption. All right, I said presume. I question. Well,
Okay.
and third, any thought of widening it to maybe some of our interfaith partners, like we're doing at Easter?
Great. Yes. Thank you, Bob. Dates are June through August. Will there be work? Do we need to work to have fun and renew? Then sure. If we encounter in learning from Jim Antal and in learning more from our coastal partners that there is some work that we need to do in order to be better stewards of our coastal ecosystem, maybe some of you are already thinking of what those things are, then certainly, yes. And can there be play and fun in something like a beach cleanup, for example? Absolutely. Yes. And maybe we'll just come up with another word for it. And not call it work. Community connection on the coast or something. And then the third part of your question was interfaith partners, and yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think there will be a lot of opportunity, both when Jim is here speaking and teaching with us, and when we kind of do our larger events, certainly that we could involve our deep interfaith relationships.
It is one of the hopes that's embedded in the grant that we wrote, that we can be outward facing and engaged and invitational during this whole season. And this team has brought that up in a variety of different ways. So Bruce knows that on the women's retreat, we had at least 5 women who were guests, in that they had not worshipped with Saugatuck Church in person before, but were invited on the retreat by women who participated. And then there were also a couple of women who we've come to know well, because they're extended family and they keep coming back, or they have gotten to know us from online participation over the last 2 years. So it's a reminder to us that those invitations are often received with joy and with gratitude, right? So our hope is that some of what happens during the summer will be, all of it, always, everything that we do always is open to whomever you invite. And then some of the events that Natalie described might have a more intentional outreach or collaborative component, right? So yeah, we want everybody to play with us. Yeah. Yes. Bruce, could you pass the mic down to Susie? Thank you.
Well, I was just being reminded that, we've talked about it in our conversations with Jim Antal and with Natalie and in general, outreach not just like to the Interfaith Council, also just to community leaders on different levels, and to interactions with youth, so intergenerational as well. So is there anything else I'm forgetting? And we had a lot of ideas about different ways of connecting with different aspects of the community, not even just the faith community, and bringing people into that conversation, which I think we're very excited about that aspect, and what that can also mean ongoingly. Like, it's not going to just end at the end of August and it will go back to business as usual, because I don't think it's going to be like that. I think it will continue to unfold.
Yes, that's our hope. So If there's one, excellent. I was going to say, let's look for one more question. Ann Patterson gets the question. Come on up. And then we will...
Hi.
Hi.
Ooh, you're so impressive. Natalie, when
Ann.
push comes to shove and you're at the end of your rope,
Yep.
what do you do spiritually for your soul?
Wonderful question from someone who I know has a lot of those resources and tools and skills and shares them with others in this community. So thank you for this question, Anne. Prayer. Prayer is a big part of it for me. And yoga, body movement as a way to tap into a space of quieted mind and openness to prayer and to the presence of God. That's yoga, and prayer is something that I do every day. Because if I don't do it every day, then I get to the end of the rope quicker. And I think being outside, walking outside, I live very close to East Rock Park in New Haven, which is this really big, beautiful nature area, and I love to just walk through whatever is the fraying, right? Walking through, thinking through what's has depleted me or is challenging me. And then friends. I have really wonderful friends who, some of them live close by, some of them live all over the country, and staying in touch with them has really resourced me and been a source of spiritual gift. Some of them are also religious of many faiths, and being able to share with them this experience is a big part of that. And then I have two mentors who were colleagues of mine in Mississippi who are Native Mississippians who are Black women in their 70s, and they are prayer partners to me and check in with me on FaceTime. And so I also have a community of prayer that's holding me. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Natalie. Yeah. So Natalie is not going anywhere, so seek her out to continue this conversation. Yes. But I so appreciate your saying yes to this community and opening your heart and sharing your wisdom and your energy with us. And I'm deeply grateful to all the members of our Renewal Season team, including, again, Linda Yingling and Priscilla Long, who are not here represented on the stage, plus those who've been part of the conversation this afternoon. A reminder that during the first 3 weeks of June, we will be joined by the Reverend Jim Antal, who is a retired United Church of Christ pastor and a climate activist. He is the author of a book called Climate Church, Climate World, and is very much engaged these days in conversations with churches and wider communities about how we can address the climate crisis, has a particular interest in the gifts and resource and energy that exist within faith communities and how we might be leaders in protecting our planet. And he will be sharing some of that wisdom with us in a 3-part sermon series in June and with other events that are unfolding as we plan with him. We have 3 copies of the book, Climate Church, Climate World, that are available for y'all. So if you've not picked one up and you would like to, please come, just leave your name with me, and if it's a book that captivates you and you find you want to turn back again and again and write notes in it, it's yours. If it's one you want to read and then return so that somebody else can pick it up, then we will welcome that as well. These are resources for our community. So come and check those out afterwards. Just one more check-in. I don't think we have anything else from our online audience that needs to be noted. So just thank you for joining us. This conversation is recorded, and so it will be available on YouTube if you want to share it with other members of the community. And Kim Mathias has a word to share with us about our mission trip brunch. Come on up to the microphone.
On behalf of the youth group, I just wanted to thank you. We raised $1,000
Woohoo!
today.
Wow! Fantastic.
Natalie is quite the draw. I'm just going to say that.
I love it. And we are so excited to be empowering our young people who will be doing some of this same stuff, working and playing together along the coast of Maine, working in a regenerative farm and in other ways discovering ways to take care of our planet. And they will bring their stories back to share with us during the summer as well. That's all we've got this afternoon. So friends, as you go from this place, go with the blessings of this day, with all that has bubbled up in our midst, with the promise that the Spirit is live and at work and at play among us even now. May she bless all of the good stuff that we are doing and planning together. And may you go into your day with the blessings of the Holy Spirit and in peace. Amen? Amen. Amen. Thank you.